Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the Fellows Lightning Talk session. That's my favourite song, so I got to get that in first. So I have been a fellow in the past. I was then an emerging leader and have continued to be in that role. The fellows have such an exciting opportunity today to present their work. Sorry, I'm out of breath, honestly. You wouldn't think, it must be the altitude. And so today they're going to give you a snapshot of their work, just in 2 minutes. And I think you're going to really enjoy these presentations. And this will give you, is inviting you really to come and see their posters on Thursday, which is a great opportunity for them to share a little bit more about their work before, or some of them, it's after their SIG. So, we're going to start with our first person, is Casper. And Casper has told me that you can wake him up any time in the night, but only if you've got fish sticks. Casper, come and join us.
All right, thank you for the introduction. So let's talk about work. Our group is involved in looking at presentism. And presentism as a domain is something we defined quite a while ago as productivity loss during paid work due to your health. And we're looking at this across all diseases, all rheumatic diseases. Out of a range of instruments available to assess presentism, we selected a few, among one of them being a WLQ25, this instrument. And it asks about problems at work in the past 2 weeks. We checked whether or not this instrument passes the domain match and feasibility checks, which it did. And finally, and this is the stage we're currently in, we're reviewing the evidence on the key measurement properties of this instrument. And that's what I'll be focusing on now, in particular the construct validity. In our review of the evidence, we found 18 studies, shown here in the SAMP, of which 10 looked at construct validity in some form. And most of them compared the WLQ25 scores with scores on other constructs, either similar or dissimilar. And 10 studies seems like a fair number. But if we looked at which kind of constructs were used to compare the WLQ25 scores with, we saw that actually the number of constructs was fairly limited, and also that several constructs that would also be relevant were not used in these studies. And that led actually to quite some discussion, because if you look at the studies as we've done here and score them, you can see that the results for construct validity for the WLQ25 are fairly consistent and in support of its construct validity. You might also wonder, are we really convinced that this instrument passes the test if relevant constructs have not been used in studies? And that's a question I really want to leave with you. So think about it for the next couple of days. Hit me up Thursday at my poster and we'll talk about it. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Casper. So our next person up is Wills from the Lupus Group. He hasn't given me a fact, so I'm going to use this opportunity to invite you to the running group at 6:15 on the every morning this week outside the main entrance. And back to you, Wills.
Okay, hi everyone. For those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Wills. I am the fellow for the Lupus Working Group. I'm going to be talking to you today about cognitive function and lupus. So cognitive challenges are common in lupus, such as challenges in sustained attention, verbal memory, visual attention, and visual memory. The cause and full scope of the impact of lupus on cognitive function is still not fully understood and requires further research. Cognitive function is a recurring domain we are seeing in many of our qualitative research, especially in our focus groups. So I'm going to quickly go through some of the quotes from our focus groups about how some patients have been impacted in cognitive function by lupus. So for the first one, there was a moment in which someone had to explain the news to me. When it comes to summing up numbers, easy numbers like 7 plus 8, I got confused. I can't form sentences properly. Even finding the simple words when I'm speaking is difficult. I can be talking to someone and then 20 minutes later I struggle to remember specific details. I have a lot of ideas and I cannot connect them. But in the bad days, I have a lot of problems just remembering things and even with speaking and finding the right words to communicate. So in our own terms, we've split these domains, the areas of cognitive function that have been impacted with lupus into 8 areas, and these are attention, memory, brain fog, mood disorders, verbal fluency, simple processing, going out of order, sorry about that. Fatigue, and CNS manifestations, central nervous system manifestations. As you can see, lupus has quite a significant impact on cognitive function in quite many ways, and there's still quite a lot of research that needs to be done to explore this impact. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Wills. So next I'm going to invite Rachel to the stage. Rachel tells me that she knows the difference between a bagel and some bread with a hole in it. Rachel, come and join us.
By way of context, I bake bagels, but I'm also the fellow for the Sjogren's group. Sjogren's is a systemic autoimmune disease. It's characterized by inflammation of the tear-producing glands and the saliva-producing glands, resulting in dry eyes and dry mouth. It's the second most common rheumatologic disorder, nearly as common as rheumatoid arthritis, and yet there are no FDA-approved disease-modifying treatments for this disease. There are many reasons for trial failures. First, there are clear gaps in our understanding of Sjogren's pathology. But second, there are no core domain sets for this disease. This was the major impetus for us to start the OMERACT Sjogren's Working Group in March of this year. As we're new to OMERACT, we're looking for new members. We urge you to join the OMERACT Sjogren's Working Group. Please scan this QR code if you're interested in joining us. To identify domains used in Sjogren's randomized controlled trials, we performed a scoping literature review. We queried Medline and Embase from 2002 to 2023. This yielded nearly 5,400 references. We used an AI algorithm to do a preliminary screen followed by manual review, ultimately leading to 60 randomized controlled trials included in our study. Here I show you a word cloud of domains that we've identified through this scoping review. Each domain is represented here, and the size of each domain is proportional to the number of times it's been represented in randomized controlled trials in this study. We've found substantial domain variability in Sjogren's randomized controlled trials. If you want to learn more about our work, please join us tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. for our SIG and at my poster session on Thursday afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, fellows, you're going to have to walk much slower up to the table so we can really appreciate your songs, because Rachel, we didn't get much of yours then. So next I'm going to invite Caitlin to come and join us. Caitlin has a dog called Jackson, who is 14 years old, for all you dog lovers out there. Rachel, Caitlin, sorry, come and join us.
Hello everyone, so I'm Caitlin, a fellow from Australia, and to all the people I've met over the last couple of days, if you got a strange sense of familiarity, it's because you've heard my voice before in the OMERACT e-learning modules that you completed before coming to this conference, right? Thank you. So everyone here has done the first 4 modules of what will eventually become the full OMERACT e-learning series. So this series is being developed with 3 main purposes in mind. One is to help folks that are new to OMERACT learn about who we are, what we do, how we do things. 2 is to help existing OMERACTers by having a central location where all our resources and information about our processes are available anywhere, anytime, and regardless of what stage your working group is up to. The third purpose is to shore up the longevity of OMERACT by including leadership skills in the series to train up people who will be the future leaders of OMERACT. Now, of course, it wouldn't be an OMERACT e-learning series if it wasn't developed with the spirit of OMERACT. So we have been guided throughout. Is that my get off stage cue? We've been guided throughout by the 8 C's. So thank you to everyone in this room who's already helped us work by consensus, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, conscientiousness, concrete outcomes, and continuity. That was only 7 C's. You all know what was missing, I know, because you know them so well. We need your help for the 8th C, which is continuous learning. So for us to continuously improve how well this series delivers on the needs of OMERACTors, we need your feedback. So come and see my poster, bring your phone, because there's a QR code on it that will link you to a brief survey, and you can spend 5 minutes helping us shape the future of OMERACT through this e-learning series. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. I think following our last session and the Facebook group, I think we have a new role for you in terms of the social media as well. So we'll come back to you on that one. So our next speaker is Max. Max, on the other hand, unlike Rachel, doesn't know the difference between a bagel and some bread with a hole in it. But Max, come and join us. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I have to say, Rachel gave me a lecture, and now I know the difference. Have you ever read a paper and felt that there's more to the study results than just the outcome? This is exactly what my working group is dealing with. I am Max Mischkewitz, and I'm one of the fellows of the Contextual Factors working group. Contextual factors are variables of a study that are not the outcome of a study, but nevertheless, they need to be recognized and measured in order to understand study results. As a working group, we have defined 3 kinds of contextual factors, but today I'm just going to talk about one of them, the one I think is the most interesting one. In our scoping review, we focus on contextual factors that predict the prognosis of a condition and may confound study results in non-randomized trials. Our objective here is to identify baseline variables that are frequently adjusted for in longitudinal observational studies in rheumatoid arthritis. In brief, we select studies from a systematic review. We extract data on variables that were adjusted for, and we summarize these data. We hope that this will provide us with insights into possible outcome influencing contextual factors, and that it will contribute to the development of a consensus-based set of outcome influencing contextual factors that should always be considered in future longitudinal observational studies. So, on Thursday, come to my poster presentation, and you will find out how exactly we're going to achieve that and how far we've already gotten. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Max. So next we have Kevin, and Kevin is apparently renowned for sneaking into after parties. So keep an eye on him on Friday night. Kevin, come and join us.
All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin, and I'm one of the OMERACT fellows in the glucocorticoid toxicity group. So we've known for many years that steroids can cause a long list of side effects, from hypertension to diabetes, skin changes, hair problems, and weight gain. But despite having known about these problems for many years, patients still often feel that their needs are neglected. And I myself have fallen into that same pitfall, focusing on those medical problems, looking at high blood pressure, high sugars, when actually the patient had been traumatized by the changes in their appearance, their effects on their self-esteem, and their mood. So I think back about all the times when we've seen a disease flare with terrible consequences and patients stopped taking their medication. Did we really understand the barriers? Did we really understand their concerns? Why did they not take those steroids? So as a community, I feel like we must incorporate patient perspectives and viewpoints in the clinical tools we use to measure steroid side effects. One example is avacopan for vasculitis. Initially, the FDA rejected this medication despite the claims it lowered steroid use. Why? Because it turns out they used the glucocorticoid toxicity index, the GTI, which is a score that places little emphasis on the patient perspective. So using the right clinical tools to gauge the harms of steroids in research is crucial. But unfortunately, many studies often lack the patient input to determine the most relevant outcomes and domains for measuring that. In conclusion, we must prioritize what matters most to patients, including the non-traditional domains such as weight gain, changes in appearance, fatigue, and find the right methods to measure the impact on their lives. By doing so, we hope we can improve outcomes for everyone, and we really hope you can help us with the instrument selection for that because we're really struggling. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So our next speaker up is Andre. Andre hasn't given me any facts, so I was trying to think what could I say in between. And having had a conversation with Peter Tugwell this morning about tennis, then the only link was Andre Agassi. Anyway, come up, Andre. Off you go.
Well, if I were you, I would never invite me to play tennis. Well, my name is André. I'm a Brazilian rheumatologist who is living in Canada for a PhD. And I'm also one of the two fellows, like with Casper, of the Worker Productivity Working Group. And I have a riddle for you. Get ready. If you tell me you know what absenteeism is, when a worker is sick and doesn't show up at work, you know what you are talking about. You are not an imposter. But if you want to learn more about presenteeism, domains, instruments, and measurement challenges, I won't tell you. You should stop by my poster. You saw that coming, right? Okay, I'll give you a hint. Presenteeism means going to work despite having a disease, despite not being healthy. And it has huge impact on worker productivity and also economic burden of disease. Although we have 25 instruments to measure presenteeism, measuring productivity is not an easy task. It has several ethical issues. If you are trying to measure productivity in individual level, individual workers, by measuring directly the output of their work, that means the quantity and quality of the product they make or the service they are providing, workers can be exposed to retaliation at work and job loss. That's why self-reporting instruments validated by our high standards of feasibility, truth, and discrimination are so important. This year, our group is presenting our assessment on the Work Limitations Questionnaire, which measures the amount of time workers had problem at work during the past 2 weeks using a 5-point Likert scale. And it also provides an estimate that translates difficulty into productivity using weighted estimates, what we call the WLQ index. We performed a systematic review by the OMERACT way with 3 database search, 2 independent reviewers, standardized data extraction, blinded screening, and appraisal using the COSME OMERACT good methods checklist and also the OMERACT filter 2.2. We found 18 papers with good evidence for construct validity and trial discrimination, all summarized in our SOMP table, which is available just for you on our poster. See you there.
Thank you very much, Andre. So we're really lucky to have the next speaker, Nathan, here with us, because apparently the first time that Nathan was invited to speak at a conference, he went to the wrong meeting. So welcome, Nathan. Come and join us.
Thank you, everyone. So, hello, I'm Nathan, a fellow from the Jogren group, and I will talk today about artificial intelligence approaches to screen the scientific literature. So, sorry about that. How can you go to the next slide? Okay, maybe a little. Perfect. Anyway, systematic literature review. So they are very important. They are a key component of each research project, but they can be very time consuming. And with the exponential growth in article publishing, checking every publication is very, very complex and very hard to do efficiently. So for all this reason, we developed software that we call BBot for bibliography bot, and that we use to pre-screen the literature and basically select article that seems relevant for our research. So how does it work? Well, this is the geek part of the presentation, so I'll keep it very simple. The algorithm basically converts articles and queries into mathematical representation that are called vectors. And the great thing about vectors is that you can compute distances between them. Therefore, you can actually select articles that are close to your query. And to test if it works, we had a little human versus machine contest, where we ask a human reviewer to perform a literature review on cutaneous manifestation in primary Sjogren syndrome. And we did the same with the BBot software. And as you can see, there is a very strong agreement between the two set of articles that were selected with a very high CAPA score. So if you are interested to see how we use these approaches in the Sjogren group to perform our scoping literature review, please come check my poster, and I'll be happy to discuss with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. I'm glad you made it here today. So, our next speaker is Charlotte. Having spent dinner with Charlotte last night, I learned that she needs an awful lot more sleep than I do. Charlotte, come and join us.
Hi there, my name is Charlotte and I'm the fellow of the Medication Adherence Working Group. Do you know that medications are the most used intervention to treat patients with rheumatic conditions? And do you also know that 30 up to 50% of the patients fail to take their medication as agreed upon with the healthcare provider? This is what we call medication non-adherence. And medication non-adherence can lead to poorer health outcomes as patients are being undertreated. It can lead to increased healthcare consumption and thereby also to increased healthcare costs. And with my working group, we're aiming to develop a core domain set to be used in studies evaluating interventions to improve medication adherence. And we've conducted a systematic review, some qualitative work with patients and healthcare providers. And at this moment, we have launched our Delphi survey. And if you are interested in the preliminary results, you can come to my poster on Thursday. But I need you still to participate in our Delphi because we really value your input. So please help us. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Melissa. And Melissa's song is my favourite song from when I was growing up from Starship. So we might have to listen to this song for a bit longer. Go for it.
This is the last song at my wedding, so that's one of my favorite songs as well, too. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa. I'm the fellow for the Chronic Non-Bacterial Osteomyelitis, CNO, and synovitis, acne, pustulosis, hyperostosis, and osteitis working group. So we call ourselves CNO and SAPHO for short. Okay, so our work group was formed in 2019. We have members from all over the world, including North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. In 2020, we had our first SIG session virtually, as most of you all probably did as well. And there we had decided something that's a little bit different about our working group, in that we are including both pediatric and adults into our core domain set. So we are in the generating phase of our core domain set. And we had conducted our scoping review of 260 studies, and we got over 200 domains out of that. Then in the winter of 2023, we held our virtual focus groups. We had participants from North America, Europe, and Asia. We had patients, we had parents, we had providers, physical therapists, and industry representatives. And we got 80 more domains out of that. And then we had an online discussion board with our friends from New Zealand and Australia. And we got 30 more domains from that. So if you were doing the math, we got about over 300 candidate domains that we then now had to narrow down for our Delphi surveys, with the goal being 35 to 40. So here we are coming up in our SIG session tomorrow. I invite you to come and help us, because we need help narrowing down that domain list. I will say I do have an excellent core group of working group members who have narrowed it down to a more reasonable list of 100. So we are now going down from 100 to 35 to 40 in our SIG sessions tomorrow at 5 p.m. And following that, our goal will then be to define those and do our Delphi surveys. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Melissa. So our next speaker is Lara. Lara is actually one of my PhD students and is purely responsible for my posh coffee addiction. So Lara, come and join us.
Hi everyone, I'm Lara. I'm the fellow for the Foot and Ankle Working Group, and I'd like you to put your hand up if you enjoy running. Okay, that's quite good. What about going out and socializing with your friends and family? And what about wearing nice shoes? Okay, if you have problems with your feet and ankles, all of these things become very difficult, if not impossible. 2 weeks ago, I was on the phone to our amazing patient research partner, Pam. We were talking about tomorrow's trip to Garden of the Gods. Pam said, I suppose I could come along too and just sit in the cafe. Foot and ankle problems are common in rheumatology, but as summed up by one of our patients, they're the first thing to be affected, yet the last thing to be treated. Patients go to their appointments and everyone's very interested in everything else except taking off their shoes and socks because it takes so long. And on top of this, there's a lack of high-quality evidence for foot and ankle treatments because, of course, researchers are all measuring different outcome domains in different ways. But I have great news. We're developing a core domain set to address these issues. We've already completed a scoping review of existing clinical trials and a qualitative review of patient studies. And you can find out all about those two studies at my poster on Thursday. Then on Friday morning, first thing, it's our SIG, and we need your help with our domain definitions, and also in discussing how a core domain set for foot and ankle problems across lots of different rheumatic conditions links up to disease-specific core sets. Thank you.
Sorry, I was completely engrossed in that I forgot what I was meant to be doing. So our next speaker is Didym, and it's going to start to feel a little bit like Christmas with Didym's song.
Hi everyone, I'm Didam Sagan, rheumatologist and clinician researcher at University of Pittsburgh, and also the fellow of the Myositis Working Group. And here you're seeing the other members of the OMERACT Myositis Working Group from US, Australia, Netherlands, Sweden, South Korea, Canada, and special shout out to our patient research partners, Catherine Sarver and Ingrid de Groot. Our goal is to develop patient-reported outcome measures for adults with idiopathic inflammatory myopathies. So Myositis Working Group was established in 2011. We first conducted several focus groups in US, South Korea, and Sweden, and held 3 rounds of Delphi to demonstrate the core domains of interest, which were fatigue, pain interference, and physical function. We then performed a systematic literature review to be able to identify the candidate instruments that will best capture the core domains of interest. And then later, we did cognitive debriefing with the patient groups to select the final instruments. And they are PROMIS Pain Interference 6A, PROMIS Fatigue 7A, and PROMIS Physical Function 8B. Then we tested these 3 instruments in a large international cohort of patients from Australia, Netherlands, South Korea, Sweden, and US, and showed the adequate reliability and validity of these instruments. And we recently completed our study on responsiveness and clinically meaningful thresholds of these instruments, and that's what I'm going to be presenting at this meeting. So if you want to hear more about my presentation, again, towards evidence towards the responsiveness of these instruments and the minimal clinically important difference, please come to my poster on Thursday at 3 p.m. We also have a Myositis Working Group workshop the same day at 5 p.m. And our next steps after this will involve using these instruments in the clinical trial setting to assess their performance characteristics. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next fellow is Fabiana. Fabiana's song she chose was because it addresses social inequity. We're obviously here to address lots of inequities today, so I think it's quite apt. Thank you, Fabiana.
Hello, everyone. As you know, Brazilians are everywhere. We have a Brazilian in Canada, and I'm a Brazilian that lives in France now. I'm fellows in FLAIRS, in Norway Working Group. Our group has been working with some aspects of knee and hip osteoarthritis for a long time, especially concerned with a transient state called flares. Flares often occur outside the scope of clinical presentation. It means that the patient's perspective is crucial to capture the phenomenon, and this is the reason I am in the project, because I'm a psychologist, and it means that we share the interests in evaluating phenomena from individual point of view. More specifically, my participation in the project involved to analyze the questionnaire properties that was developed to measure flare in knee and hip OA. The instrument was developed from definition of flare and its 5 domains that have been endorsed in previous OMERACT. We include in our studied patient clinically and radiologically diagnosed with knee or hip OA in 3 countries, Australia, France, and here in the United States, with the questionnaire applied in 2 languages, English and French. In the last 2 years, our team have worked to offer a short version of flare questionnaire. To future export our results, we split the sample in 2 subsamples to do the first test with the derivation sample and a confirmation with the validation sample. As a result, we obtain a 16-item version that measures well the 5 domains, and you can observe this not only with the parameters obtained in the rash analysis used, but also within the indicators of convergent analysis with the other measures. So we have 2 clinical research that can facilitate the search for predictors of flare and also to assess the flare treatments. I invite you to discuss the details of the work in our SIG session this afternoon or in the poster section on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabiana. So our next fellow is Tim. Tim's been one of my running partners this week. However, he didn't tell me until today that he has good running genes, and his granddad held the world record for the over 50s fell running. And we won't be running together for the rest of the week, I don't think. Come on, Tim.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Tim. I'm a PhD student at Cardiff University, and I'm also the fellow for the Pain Working Group, along with Caitlin. So I've been doing some analyses with some data that has been provided from Cardiff University and doing it with these lovely people here. But I don't really have time to cover the results, so I'm just going to dive straight into the conclusions. But you all have to come on Thursday anyway to listen to me talk about it again, and to the poster as well later on Thursday, so you can hear about it. But basically what we saw in these analyses were that pain severity and pain interference are highly correlated, but other measures of pain, lots of patient-reported outcome measures, don't correlate so well with these measures, suggesting that you measure some other domain. We also collected a more objective measure of pain, a pain pressure threshold, and saw that this was much lower in patients with neuropathic-like pain in comparison to those with nociceptive pain. And we also saw that neuropathic-like pain was more common in those with fibromyalgia than those without. So all of that lovely information leads to this wonderful diagram drawn by Ernest. What we see is that inflammatory arthritis like rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis cause both nociceptive and central pain, and that also central pain is influenced by concomitant diseases like fibromyalgia. So for nociceptive pain, we need to look at an outcome like a disease-specific outcome, such as a swollen joint count, but for central pain, we could use something like an objective measure, like pain pressure threshold, or a patient-reported outcome measure, such as pain detect. But both of these types of pain are encompassed further in pain severity and pain interference, which can be measured using the brief pain inventory. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Tim. So we have another world record from Erin this time. Apparently she has the world's laziest Australian shepherd who would sleep for up to 23 hours a day if you allowed her. So Erin, come and join us. Oh.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin. I went too far. I'm with the JAA work group, so obviously we get to put cute children on our slides, so call that a win. This year we've been working on redefining the domain patient perception of overall well-being as it relates to disease, and hot off the press, we may change the name later today, so come to our SIG. The goal of this year's work has been to gain consensus and endorsement on the definition, description, organization, and the naming of this domain. We completed a survey this March with our work group and our PRPs, and we reached a consensus with 45 participants from 7 countries and 4 continents. And as you can see here, we were able to reach greater than 70% consensus on all 5 of our topics. The most important, the one that we will be talking about later today, is the separation of the measurement of disease activity and well-being. There'll be lots of discussion around that today, so we're hopeful that you'll be joining us. To kind of talk about where we have been and where we will be going, we had our stakeholder survey in March of 2023. We then reached group consensus for our work group members and our PRPs, which represented a vast variety of people from across the community. We will next be bringing these definitions of our domain and the group and the separation to our clinic patients for a qualitative review, while we do a scoping review and we move on to instrument selection. So we're hopeful that you'll join us today at our SIG at 5 p.m. in the Arkansas room, and then also come join me at my poster on Thursday. Thanks so much.
Okay, so Romy is our next guest. Romy, where are you? Come on up to the table. This song that she's chosen is actually her ringtone. So if she loses her phone, we'll all know whose phone it is. Romy.
No clues for guessing why I chose that song. So hi everyone, my name's Romney Haas. I'm excited to be here from Melbourne, Australia, and to be one of the newly appointed fellows for the shoulder working group. Now, I was going to ask who here has had an episode of shoulder pain at some point in their life, but in the interest of time, I'm going to go with the evidence that tells us that about 70% of us will. So at the last face-to-face OMERACT meeting, pain was endorsed as a mandatory domain to be measured in all clinical trials for people with shoulder disorders. And this was the only domain voted by 100% of OMERACtors. So all clinicians, patients and researchers. Initially, this domain was titled pain and was defined as how much a person's shoulder hurts, reflecting the overall magnitude of the pain experience. In keeping with the spirit of OMERACT's 7th C of continuous learning, this domain has since been refined as pain intensity rather than as opposed to pain interference. So to know if an intervention such as medication or anything else is effective in relieving pain intensity, we need to be able to measure this accurately and ideally using a consistent instrument. This would be beneficial to our patients as we'd be able to compare and contrast across clinical trials, and we'd also be able to synthesise the results of similar trials and be more confident in making decisions about the effectiveness of a particular intervention. So the shoulder working group found 47 different instruments were used to measure shoulder pain across 368 clinical trials. So how do we decide which instrument to use? Please come to my poster to find out about how we're going to decide on the most appropriate instrument that's available so far to measure pain intensity in people with shoulder disorders. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Dorte, and she has chosen We Will Rock You by Queen, and we hope that you agree that the fellows are absolutely rocking OMERACT this year. Come up.
Recently, a patient with RA said to me that he felt like a guinea pig as he was starting a new medical treatment for his disease. He explained that he felt that neither himself or his rheumatologist knew enough about what impact potential side effects would have on his disease. Today, side effects are collected and reported through the eyes of clinicians and researchers, but the patient voice is lacking. And that's why the OMERACT Safety Working Group aims to develop a patient-reported outcome measure for harms. Currently, we are developing a list of important patient-reported outcome domains. Building on our previous studies, we first developed a list of symptomatic side effects within 12 domains. And recently, we conducted focus groups and interviews involving 34 patients with inflammatory arthritis. These are the 12 themes with underlying sub-themes that we presented to patients. And patients gave input to themes, sub-themes, and specific side effects related to each sub-theme. Results showed that 3 themes were overlapping, so these might be the 10 domains that might be relevant for patients' own reports. In the focus groups, patients explained to us what they felt was important to know about such potential side effects. And they also suggested frequency, duration, and severity to be important measurement aspects. So, building on all the inputs that patients gave us, this is a preliminary list of safety domains with measurement aspects that might be relevant for future patient-reported outcome measure for harms. Thank you.
Thank you. So our very final fellow, and by no means our least fellow, is Nilasha. And her song is by Amy Winehouse, and I have a very tenuous connection to Amy Winehouse, but that will have to wait for Friday evening. So Nilasha, come and finish the session off for us. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nalasha. I am the fellow for the IRE working group. I'm a rheumatologist from New York. And today we're going to be talking about outcome measures for immune checkpoint inhibitor-induced arthritis. I know that's a mouthful. This is kind of a review for people who were at our SIG yesterday, but for those that weren't, I'm going to give you a short primer. So immune checkpoint inhibitors are a new-ish cancer therapeutic that have really revolutionized the treatment of cancer over the last 10 to 15 years. They function by preventing the inactivation of T cells, which are really important for fighting the tumor. But by doing so, they can go to various organ systems and cause a lot of inflammation. And so that picture on the left is, sorry, the picture on the left is all the organ systems that can potentially be affected. And when you think about adverse events, I think it's logical to think that when you stop the therapeutic, the adverse event will go away and that it's short-lived. But what if you can't stop the therapeutic because it's treating the patient's cancer so effectively? Or what if you do stop the therapeutic and the adverse event persists? Well, essentially, you have a new disease. And so that's what we found for immune checkpoint inhibitor-induced arthritis, is that this potentially persists even after the checkpoint inhibitor has been stopped. And so when it comes to a new disease, in addition to defining the disease, which I promise we're doing, we need to think about how to best treat these patients and what outcome measures should we use to track the treatment, and how do these outcome measures cater to all the appropriate stakeholders. So, as is the OMERACT way, the first kind of step in domain generation and selection is doing a systematic literature review. And the results of this are what is on my poster, so you're gonna have to come and see. But in sum, we found various domains that we kind of collapsed to about 45, and they have been, okay. They're just, put into the filter, but come and chat with me and we can talk about the potential opportunities as well as challenges that we're gonna have moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to draw this session to a close. Thank you all for listening, but most importantly, thank you for our fellows for providing us with a really exciting snapshot of what they've been doing, what they're planning to do. And just to remind you to support their poster session, come and talk to them and give them some feedback, as well as obviously attending the SIGs where they're contributing. So just to end, if we can thank them in the way that we know best. Thank you very much, fellows.